Hi, welcome back. This is Module 3 of our NetSuite Basic Usage training, and we were going to be talking about managing records in NetSuite in this module. A record is a form in NetSuite that contains information on an entity. So for our purposes, we're going to be discussing customers and vendors as well as items. But in Columbia, for example, we also have patient records. So you will get more specific training based on your department on the records that you need to use for your job function. But for now, I'm just going to take us through leads, vendors, items, so that you have a basic understanding of how to fill in a record and how to maintain them. So let's get started. Okay, so I'm going to start with a lead. A lead is a person or company who has made contact with someone at Low Medical, either through the sales rep, contacting them for the first time, or this entity contacting Low Medical for the first time. So a lead does not have any transactions associated with the entity. So there's no estimate, no sales order. It's simply just someone we need to make contact with. NetSuite will progress the status of a lead based on the transactions associated with the form. So a lead becomes a prospect once an estimate is issued. We don't need to do anything extra, just create an estimate, and all of a sudden, this form will say prospect. And prospect becomes a customer when we invoice their first order. So you could create a prospect or a customer from the get-go, but I always suggest we start with a lead to keep track of who needs contact. We can keep track of when they first contacted us and we're entered in the system that way. And you can create transactions from a lead record. So that's why I start here. So on this general page, there are some required fields that you need to fill out. Everything with an orange asterisk next to it is required. Anything that does not have the asterisk, you could fill it in or not. So in this case, when I first came into this form, you saw me hit the auto box. All that does is copy whatever you put in this box into this box. So there may be a time when you want to have a separate customer ID than a company name. For example, Low Medical is a good example of that. Our legal company name is Low Enterprises LLC, but we do business as Low Medical. So, if I was entering our information, I would put Low Enterprises LLC and then Low Medical up here. But when you're getting to know a customer, this is adequate, and it's important that the company name field have the legal entity's registered name, not the doing business as name. So I always just stick to the legal name. When you enter a phone number, you don't have to enter any symbols. When you click outside of the box, it will format it properly for you. You have to select a subsidiary. Each lead, prospect, customer can only be associated with one subsidiary. We're required to have an email at the very least, but oftentimes you're going to want to add a phone number. It's easier to make contact with people. So those are the required fields on the top part of this form, the main part of this form. Now, under this general tab, you'll see that I do need to enter a contact, but we're going to do that after we save the record so that you can see the contact form. It's important to enter the sales rep name. So if it's not you, if you're covering for someone else while they're on vacation or out of the office, and the lead is in their territory, you're going to want to make sure to select the correct name. If you are in sales, you will get training, more in-depth training on these fields for marketing. For now, you just need to know that they're required. So you always need to visit the marketing tab, but someone from marketing will provide a training to you to explain to you when you would choose one option over another. Now, the address tab is very, very important because most of our customers are outside of the US, in Latin America, or the Caribbean. Their shipping address and billing addresses will be different, right? So oftentimes their shipping address will be in the United States and their billing address will be in a foreign country. So the billing address needs to be the legal entity's registered address. That is very important because if we do have non-payment issues, or I need to look up a credit report on a customer, if we don't have the legal registered address, it makes things much more difficult and time consuming. So when you're entering an address, you're going to always select your country first, because if you start entering something here and then change your country, it may delete what you've entered already. So in terms of the billing address, we're going to do okay, so you're going to enter the address, city, zip, whatever you have. If you have a phone number in the main part of the form, you don't need to enter a phone number on the billing address. And then you're going to uncheck the shipping box and click add. Okay, so you can see the entity's registered address is here and it filled in the box here. So the shipping address is typically in the United States. You're going to want to add fruit. And then the cool thing is with the addresses in the United States, if you type in the zip code, it'll auto-populate the city and the state. So you don't have to do as much typing. Now, with the freight forwarder, operations does require some additional information that doesn't automatically transfer from these fields into this box. So, for example, you need to add the phone number manually, and the phone number is always required. You're going to click override so that you can actually type into this box, and then typically a contact is required as well. It's automatically just going to select shipping, not billing. And there you go. So when you create your estimate, it'll automatically pull these addresses from the customer record So you don't have to fill them in every time. Now, if your customer has multiple addresses, I suggest you change the label. So, for example, label could be right here and right here. So that way, if they have multiple freight forwarders, for example, you that are associated with this customer on the estimate, if you do need to ship the items to their second freight forwarding company, your label clearly states who's who. Otherwise, it's just going to take the street address. And when you have a lot of customers, it can be impossible to remember which freight forwarder is where. So I do suggest you update the label. For financial, I suggest it would be very helpful if you're able to get a tax ID number or a tax registration number for the entity. Please enter it here. If you do see a lot of potential with this lead and think their volume could be high, the tax ID number makes it a lot easier to run financial checks. And you're going to have to select a price level. So again, if you're in sales, you're going to get more in-depth training on price levels and the margins they provide and how you determine who should be where. I suggest, from my experience in sales, that you start at a higher price level because then you have negotiating power to provide discounts without sacrificing your margin. In the U.S. subsidiary, your currency is always going to be USD. We do not invoice in other currencies. If you are in Brazil, Costa Rica, or Colombia, your form is going to automatically select default to your local currencies. So, that would be what you would select. And then you're going to save. Okay. So now we've got the lead form filled out. We're managing this customer page. We're going to want to add contacts so that we know who to talk to. So very often, you're going to have multiple contacts. They're going to have different roles. So Bob Smith may be the purchasing agent. I suggest you leave comments in the comment box. This helps others get to know these contacts. It helps you, if you're a sales rep, keep track of who's who and important details about them that could help start conversations. It could help somebody else get the foot through the door if they need to start a conversation. So a lot of sales is building relationships and trust. And the more you can remember about somebody in their life, the more they'll like you and trust you. So if you have a conversation and Bob mentions his wife had surgery on knee, Okay, so this would be an example of a really nice note that somebody could use to say, oh, Bob, how's your wife? How are your kids? Where do they go to school? You could start a conversation that way. Ask how their annual visit to Miami was. You're going to want to update their email. So in this case, say it's Bob S. If they have a different phone number, the more information you could get on each contact, the better. You're going to select if they're a medical professional. Now, say Bob has a supervisor. He likely does. You can enter that supervisor's name here. You can also enter their assistant's name. So you can tell NetSuite how each contact relates to one another. On the custom page, you need to select which language they're most comfortable speaking. So, even though this company's in Bahamas and they speak English in the Bahamas, maybe Bob is from Miami and he grew up speaking Spanish and feels more comfortable speaking Spanish. You're going to select the language that this contact prefers to receive their communication in. And that'll help you remember and help others remember details about your customer, about the contact, and make the experience more personalized to them. Okay, so another note on contacts that I'd like to mention that's very helpful to the other departments would be to add notes to their job title. So let's say Sarah started okay, and then we'll say she is accounts payable. You can say send invoice and statement. So that right there is an easy way to really drive home the point that she needs to receive invoices when we are sending them from the system. So don't forget to add more details, more contact information, and then let's say her supervisor is Bob Smith. So you can get his phone and whatnot. So we have a contact here who needs to receive invoices and statements. You're also going to go to the custom tab and click and check these boxes. Okay, so say Bob Smith is leaving the company. He's going to start his own. He's striking out on his own. You're going to leave a comment. Say, leaving company on Okay. So I suggest you leave a note as to why you're going to make this contact inactive. It's really helpful if you leave a note stating whether he left on good, bad, or neutral terms. That way we don't bring Bob up if he really made a bad impression or something like that. If he's starting his own company and he made contact with us and he's a new lead, you can always search for him here and associate him with that new company. and then you're going to go ahead and make the contact inactive. This will make sure that all the past communications and work done with Bob stays in NetSuite, but you won't see him in your list anymore. So we'll say Bob Smith. We'll say, bye, Bob Smith. You're no longer part of this record. Okay, so that is that's how you manage contacts. Really important to keep them up to date and maintain them. Every department will help maintain and update contacts as they receive information. So if Sarah gets an assistant and wants statements sent to the assistant, finance will update that. If there's an event and the president is invited, the sales rep will likely add the president. So everyone will update contacts. But I will say that typically sales has the most contacts with customers. And so they're typically the first to hear about new employees or departures. So another feature on the lead prospect customer pages are activities. And activities are monitored by management. Every lead prospect customer has a last sales activity field on the main part of their page. And all managers have reports that monitor activities. So you can log phone calls or events, and you can also create new tasks right from this record. So let's go ahead and log a phone call so you can see what that looks like. Requested repayment. So we completed this call. If you wanted to schedule a call, you could do that. You could reserve time on a specific day and get a alert from NetSuite when that time comes. In this case, we'll say we already had the call, and called customer. Okay, so leave a nice summary of what you guys discussed. If there's a note, I think we had named her Sarah. Sarah will be out of the office from 8:20 to 8:26. Instead, call Nancy instead. The contact. And then let's say Sarah, okay, we'll leave it at that. So, then I know I have to add Nancy to the contact, but everybody knows that Sarah will be out of the office. If you had a related estimate, for example, in this case, I'm asking for a PO for a specific estimate, you could pick it here and just link it to your phone call so that if anybody wants to know what happened, you know what transaction you guys were talking about. And you can also link to the contact. So if somebody's looking at Sarah Howard's contact record, they'll see this phone call as well. If there's a file or a user note, you can link it as well. Okay, So you've saved your phone call, and if you refresh the lead page, you'll see that this last sales activity updates as well. So that'll happen whenever somebody opens the record the next time. You can also add a user note if you have something other than a phone call or event. So financial department will often use user notes to relay information regarding credit terms or credit information. So credit limit approved. This is the type of note I would leave. Okay. So this is the type of note I would leave if I approved a credit limit. It's very clear how I came to this approval. If anyone has questions about what happened with the financials, you know, I'm telling them where they could find the information. You don't have to sign these activities or notes because NetSuite will automatically log who wrote them as well as the date they were published. So you can infer from this memo that I approved them as of the 16th of August. And then in the File tab, this is what I'm referring to when I say the File tab for credit report document. I would upload the credit report right here to the Customer's File tab. And we'll discuss file management and uploading later on in our training. Finally, system notes. You can see the history of this record. So if you notice a new activity or an address change or contact change and you don't know who did what, you can always look at the system notes and get that information. So we've reviewed leads, and now let's go on to vendors. So I'm going to create a new vendor, and it's really similar to the customer form. You are simply going to put the required info on this form. So new product Inc. And then you can, these are not required, but if you have them, it's really nice to include them. And then you could say, met at Great. Okay, so you can leave a little note as to how you were made aware of this vendor, qualified them, and what they could do for us. So you're going to, again, select a primary subsidiary, and marketing will provide more information as to the source of a vendor, but you know, it's also, there are not as many options. So in this case, pretty easy to choose. And then you're going to choose a status. So most of the time when your vendor's brand new, we have not made contact with this vendor yet, they're going to be potential. And then we'll switch that to active if we're going to make more purchases from them. We like their products. We like how they work. The contracts look good. If we don't like them, the products are bad, they don't answer us, terms don't fit for us, then we'll make them unqualified. And again, you're going to put a note here why you've made them unqualified, so that right off the bat, no one has to go into any record to get information. So here, let's do even. Okay, and then you can add an alternate phone. And then you have this classification tab or area. So let's see, they do wheelchair parts. So that's an inventory category. A service category would be any service provided. So if it's an accounting firm or a lawyer, utility, you would choose from that list. And a non-inventory category, electronics, employee supplies, furniture, if it's like a vendor for any of these items. Now with vendors, you can select more than one subsidiary. Okay. Again, the address tab is going to be really important if there is different billing and shipping addresses. Which for the most part, our vendors for Low USA are in the United States. And their billing and shipping addresses are one and the same unless they have multiple factories or warehouses. So let's say this vendor has 2 warehouses and one of them is in New York and one is in California. So we could do okay. So let's say this is their headquarters. So you're going to change your label to New York warehouse. And that would be the default billing. And we'll set it as the default shipping. Most of their product is kept there, but some of their product is kept in California. So and I just suggest you make a nice label because this on your purchase order, we need to use California warehouse, and you're not trying to figure out which is which. On the financial tab, we've got some important fields that would be very useful. Under account number, we want to add the account number. primary currency. So in the US subsidiary, some of our vendors do not bill us in USD, but they'll bill us in euros. So we need to put the currency they'll be billing us in here so that when we enter the purchase orders and the bills, it's in the correct currency. And then let's say we're getting net 30-day terms with a $15,000 credit limit from this vendor. So it'll prompt us to stop purchasing when we hit that 15,000. And as always, their tax ID number is super helpful, especially when it comes to tax filing season. So then we can save the vendor. You can also select more than one currency for a vendor. So just so you guys know, if they are associated with Low Colombia and Low USA, we can have COP and USD. And then when you're submitting your PO, you would select the correct currency based off of your subsidiary. Okay, so now we're missing contact. So this is the same exact concept as the contact for a customer record. It's the same exact form. There are no differences. So I'm not going to fill out all these contact records, but just know that it's just as important to update and maintain contacts for vendor records as it is for customer records. Contact will be used by all departments. They're touched by finance, supply chain, operations, sales. So it's super important that we all work together to maintain those contact lists and make sure they're as up to date as possible. Finally, I want to wrap up records by looking at an item record. So I am going to look at a specific item. Okay. So only specific employees create items because there is some subsidiary specific information that's added to these records. And different subsidiaries have different types of items. So I'm not going to go too in depth in them. If you're one of the employees who's tasked with creating items, you will get an in-depth training that's more specific to your subsidiary's needs and the proper way to create these. So right now we're just going to review the form, and I'll just familiarize you with it so that you know how to read it. So every item form has an item name and number, a department it belongs to, a subsidiary it belongs to, a purchase description, a vendor manufacturer, and different accounts that it's going to hit. So, for example, these are low USA income inventory and cost of goods sold accounts. On this main page in the basic tab, you're also going to find purchase prices. So, and the vendor that we're submitting POs to. So that's important to know. You'll also find more about your price levels. So every purchase price is multiplied by a base price multiplier, and then the price levels are calculated from discounts off that base price. And they provide a specific margin based on the cost of the product. So this is where you can find your different price levels for a specific product. So like I had mentioned, you want to maybe start with a D price level and your customer says, oh, can you do me a favor and give me a discount? You can look on the item, what a C price level looks like, and provide them a little bit of a discount without sacrificing overall margin. Another important tab that you're going to want to visit is inventory. And this tab gives you a lot of information on whether we have items in stock or we need to order them, and what the last purchase price was, and the average cost for that item in each location. So we've got different locations here. These are all Lowe USA locations. And this will show you how many we have in stock. It'll also tell you if we've got any items committed. So if we have any approved or fulfilled sales orders, then we've committed an item. In this case, you can see in the low cost configuration location, we have 2 on order and 2 back ordered. So this tells you that you have 2 sales orders for this item, and we've got 2 purchase orders open for this item. If you're in sales, you will get an in-depth training on locations. It's important, especially for these configured products. As you can see, a low-cost configuration average cost is less than the average price for the mid-cost configuration. So depending on the cost of your configuration, you're going to choose a different location. You'll get more training on that. Finally, the last the last tab I wanted to show you is history. So I like to look at history if you're trying to find a specific transaction. So if you want to know what the last estimate that we quoted this product on and what that configuration looked like, you can look up estimates and sort by date and see that Lowe Columbia was the last estimate that included this item and the price at which it was quoted. So you can also customize your view, which I have done with everything on my main role. I really recommend you use this this feature. So if you wanted to see something specific, so give your custom view a specific title, because you're going to see it in different areas. And then you can go ahead and customize it. So in this case, I'm looking at, I'm adjusting my results tab. So when I select a type of transaction or want to look at all transactions with this specific item, I only want to see specific information. Gosh, I can really add these columns here. Okay, I'm going to remove all. So you can select different fields. So if you want to see maybe customer category, are they a distributor or an end user? Who are we selling this to? customer name. I want to see how much we charged them for. And then in filters, let's choose name. So now when you go back to the history, you can see your item view. You can see I kept this, these are your filters. So I added name, and I can go into the list and say, I want to see estimates of this item that were sent to this specific customer. And it'll show you all of these different estimates specific to this customer. So that's just a little trick that you can use to get your lists to show you only the data you want to see, or that's important to you. So you might want to see customer PO or expected close, and that might make the list more meaningful to you. Okay, so we're almost done with our training on Module 3. I just want to go over Stelago and its integration with NetSuite and the file management, because I did touch on the fact that we could save files to all different records. You can add communication here. You can add files to an item, so photos of a patient in an EIR5, or a contract with the vendor, or a distributor application form, or a credit report for a lead, right? So as part of the G Suite training, Stelago was introduced. Every employee has their own Stelago license, and it allows them to save emails and files from Gmail to NetSuite. Files can be saved to tasks, customers, contacts, transactions, cases, you name it. You can upload files saved on your computer if you don't have the file in your email, right? So you've downloaded a patient information form or scanned it on your computer, and now you need to upload it to NetSuite. So you're going to go to the File tab and click New File. Give it a name that fits with our naming convention. So our naming convention starts with the last two numbers of the current year, month, day, and then we could say and say you need to keep this file forever. You're going to add that to the end of your file name. This would not be one we'd need to keep forever, but just for showing you, for demonstration purposes, I'm going to use that. And then you will be given a training. At the beginning of each year, you'll be notified which folder to use. Typically, it's the fiscal year, your subsidiary, and then there's subfolders. So you'll get an email telling you that the file cabinet's been updated for the new year, and you can use this folder for saving, or these folders for saving specific types of documents. So you'll select your folder, and then you're going to choose your file, and that'll just open up your list. And that's it. Then you'll click save, and your file will be uploaded to whatever record you're trying to save things to. Okay, so that concludes Module 3. I know it was a long one and had lots of information, so if you need to go back and review any information, please do before you move on. And we'll see you in Module 4.